by Andy from Class Wisdom. The thing what I research is horticulture in our country. The reason why I researched it is I wanted to introduce the food culture in Korea for the people who live in other countries and don't know real about that. First, when we eat and grill the meat in Korea, we use the scissors to cut it, and it is very different from the United States. And second, it's a very important etiquette that when we together eat the meal with others, they must eat first and then the kid or children eat afterwards. The drill on is I want to talk about the common meal in Korea. It is rice with side dish. Koreans usually like a spicy and other strong tasting food. There are typical Korean foods, kimchi and bulgogi, etc. Kimchi is a typical side dish. What is made of cabbage with Korean chili powder. And I recommend you bulgogi. The reason is that bulgogi is chewy and tastes sweet and little bit salty. Therefore, we should know the food culture and love of food. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, I'm Eric from the Class Wisdom. What I researched the traditional holidays of our country, Korea, because I love the holidays and I was curious about it more in detail. On New Year's Day, all the relatives gather in a place wearing a hanbok and eat rice cake soup. And the kids bow to the adults for the New Year. For eating rice cake soup on New Year's Day has the meaning of becoming more mature as we get older. And bowing on New Year's Day means in Korea, which is a Confucian culture of respect to adults and also a wish that we want to live well with good luck in this year. However, the most important thing that why we go to adults is New Year's pocket money. In Chuseok, gather the relatives together to make songpyeon as well and play Korean traditional games such as 강원술래, 윷놀이, and 화투. Especially Chuseok is the day when the full moon rises and all the relatives even go to see the full moon together. It's hard to gather on holidays because of COVID-19, but I'd like to say thank you to my relatives. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matthew Shin. I'm glad to introduce my own speech on stage. At this moment, I'm going to talk about USA. The United States is the second largest country in North American continent. The population of America is about 327 million. There are 50 states in the United States. That is why we use the abbreviation USA, which stands for the United States of America. First, I want to start with a question. What do you think is America? Since 1492, the whole Europe turned upside down as Columbus set foot in America. For Europeans, America was a place to get new things and supplies, so many Europeans were interested in it. In 1607, the British succeeded to colonize Jamestown for the first time. European countries began to colonize it. At that time, working with the black slaves, many natives died from slaughter and plague of Europeans. In 1775, a war broke out between colonies and British Empire, hoping to become as a new nation. Finally, the colonies won their independence, were freed from the British arms, and recognized as a single nation, the United States of America. Now, I want to tell you about American food culture. American cuisine was influenced by Europeans and Native Americans in its early history. Today, there's a number of foods that is commonly identified as Americans, such as hamburgers, hot dogs, potato chips, macaroni and cheese, and meatloaf. Other foods are fine, but most popular food in America is cheeseburger. Cheeseburgers are made with cheese, beef, and various vegetables that are fresh and healthy. The food was then popularized in fast food restaurants. The United States is known not only for its food, but also as a sports-minded country. They love to play sports like soccer, basketball, baseball, and hockey. In my opinion, the basketball is the best sport. The college basketball and NBA are two things Americans adore. With heroes in the game like Michael Jordan, the NBA grew staggering new heights with his tenure. Basketball has become the second most popular sport in the United States because it catches people's attention. If you go to America, I recommend you to play sports like basketball with American friends. Religion is practiced in the United States, which was founded on the basis of religious freedom. About 70% of Americans are the Christians. Also, 23% have nothing to do with religion, and 6% of Americans are non-Christian. Also, many holidays are celebrated in the United States. For example, Thanksgiving Day, which is only celebrated in U.S., this holiday focuses on appreciating all the blessing in life. Many studies have that grateful people tend to be happier overall. These are the things I've been researching about America. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Hello, my name is Ian. I will talk about Ukraine. Ukraine is famous for many events like Chernobyl nuclear accident. It occurred while experimenting with how long can a turbine that turns to inertia be powered if the reactor is shut down. The reason for these experiments was to prove that the safety structure of nuclear power plants was complete. Originally, it should have been completed at the time designed and commissioned, but it was omitted, and the plant was already declared completed for the winning early achievements. Unique to the communist region, and those involved had had it been awarded a medal for this service. So those involved needed to rush through safety tests, even though the Chernobyl power plant was already in commission commissioner operation. The first explosion destroyed the lid of the 1,000-ton reactor, and few seconds later, the second burst collapsed the top of the number 4 reactor building, scattering debris from the graphite moderator inside the reactor into various sections of the plant, including Unit 3. Flames and embers filled with radioactive materials from the explosion shot up 1 kilometer above. The explosion was like a volcanic eruption, and a huge stream of blue shot up into the sky like a laser. According to surviving nuclear power plant official, there were even people who came near the reactor to see it because it was a beautiful sight. Chernobyl was one of the worst events in Ukraine, but recently there is another thing is causing more damage than it. The Russian and Ukrainian wars. This war starts with Russia's declaration of war. The Russo-Ukrainian War originally from the local conflict within Ukrainian territory between Ukrainian government forces and pro-Russian rebels, represented by the 2014 Donbas War. The Donbas War had been stalled for 8 years because pro-Russian rebels in the Donbas region were unable to deal with Ukrainian government forces. And even though Russia secretly supported pro-Russian rebels, the scale of third-party support was small at the time because Russia ostensibly then this support. Since then, Russia has heightened the crisis by planning more active intervention to take control of Donbass, and signs of Russia's invasion have been detected everywhere since early 2021. Russia gathered large-scale troops across Ukrainian southeastern and northeastern borders, including Belarus and the Crimean Peninsula, in the name of joint training with Belarus, showing a full-fledged invasion. At the time, suspicions were raised at Russia is not aiming for all-out war, but until then, the central discourse was that all-out invasion would not take place. This was because it was clear Russia's full-scale invasion would lead to opposition from Western countries by breaking the existing international order that had maintained peace since the Cold War. And at the same time, it was a gamble with a lot of loss due a lack of justification. However, the situation is escalated into an all-out war between countries as Putin pushed ahead with an all-out invasion of Ukraine, breaking this expectation. Russia has deployed 95% of its unable power atop Ukraine as soon as possible. However, Ukraine continued fight against the world's exception that it would surrender or collapse for days. While Russia continues fight poorly, showing inadequate military power that did not match the world's second largest military power, and escalated weapons and increments support for Ukraine. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Hello, I'm Connor and I'll talk about the second largest country in the world, Canada. Interestingly, you can fit around 100 South Koreas in Canada, yet 80% of its land is uninhabited. Canada has two main languages, English and French, but Korea only has one main language, Korean. Canadians love foods such as poutine and macaroni and cheese. Poutine is a dish with French fries, cheese curds topped with brown gravy. Canada also has a queen, not a president, and it is the sixth safest country in the world. Now I'll talk about the culture of Canada. Canadian culture is a mixture of British, French, and American influences, all of which blend and sometimes compete in every aspect of cultural life. Canada adopted multiculturalism as an official national policy. Canada generally has a very open and accepting attitude towards other countries' cultures and religions. Although Canada is not a very religious country in general, Canadians adhere to a wide variety of beliefs and faiths. The religious majority in Canada is Christianity. However, there are also many people who are atheists. People who are atheists don't have a specific God or a religion they believe in. Canada's freedom of religion is protected, so they do not need to believe in a specific God or religion if they do not want to. Similarly to Koreans who enjoy sports such as baseball and soccer, Canadians also enjoy many sports. In Canada, ice hockey and football are the two most famous sports you can find in Canada. Sometimes I'll wake up around 3 a.m. or 6 a.m. very early in the morning or stay up too late to watch an important game for soccer. Likewise, Canadians will do the same to watch an important game for ice hockey and football. Next, I'll talk about one of the famous places you can go in Canada. One of the most common but popular places you can go in Canada is the Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is a natural attraction that brings millions of visitors each year. People come with their families and friends, take pictures, and walk around the river. Also, the city of Vancouver is a great place to visit in Canada. People come to Vancouver for its beauty, fun atmosphere, and plenty of things to do. I have never been to these places myself, so I thought I should go there someday. While I was searching the internet and asking my dad for these informations, not only did I learn a lot more about Canada, but I also had a lot of fun. I hope I can do something similar to this next time. Thank you.
How am I doing? If you don't understand what I talk, no while back. I just want to say paying good attention to the speakers again before sitting down or reduce half of miscommunication. And I'm deeply gratified by all individuals who did feel that inspired their amusement, and I wish Emily to everyone safe. Thank you. Did anyone fully understand what I said?
No.
Really? Nobody?
Not at all. No.
Exactly. This was a perfect example of miscommunication. So I want to explain the role of communication in our lives and how we communicate in different ways. So I specifically want to focus on the miscommunications we have daily. So first of all, we have cultural misunderstandings, such as gesture, phrases, actions are major examples. And the OK sign in the West is yes, but in Latin America it's a very, very offensive word or sign. Also, the thumbs up, we see this as approval. But then in the Middle East, it is the same meaning as the middle finger, as you know. And also words are misunderstandings, such as pants. Like the outer garment that covers the lower body of the part. This is what we know as pants. But in the British context, this means the lower underwear. And for actions too, opening a gift immediately in the Middle East is actually offensive. But then opening the gift in front of the giver in the Western context is actually a grateful behavior. Then moving on to the next topic, we have our tones. And tones of our voices play a huge part in our communication. And I'm sure somebody has been scolded by their parents for the tone they use. Okay, given a quick example. When I answer with so, it can be a question or a sign of anger. Like there's difference between so and so. So also a less confident tone might lower the credibility of the speech. And I included the word choice in here because poor vocabulary also might be a reason of misunderstanding and can lead to dispute. Okay, let's imagine talking to someone who's always late to meetings. Please come earlier next time. We do not have much time to spend. This is more polite, more kind, and it still actually gives out what I'm trying to say. Well, what if I say, come faster next time? We don't have much time to waste. This has more hostility in my sentence. I only change my words, my order, and my tone. But you can see there's a lot of differences. So, unlike cultural differences, tone is something that we can change easily if only our personal emotions are controlled. So lastly, I want to say, what can be done to actually reduce miscommunications? We have to be first cautious and consider the possible outcomes of our behaviors. Like to understand what the other party is actually trying to say, we have to listen. And without listening, nothing can be understood. And the listeners are at fault for anything that happens. So consideration is also needed for the speaker talking, considering how the listener might react to. Like, for example, jokes, especially sarcastic jokes, can be a simple way to start a fight, even when not intended. It's very possible to offend a lot of people due to little misunderstanding. And going back to the beginning, what I said, I want to explain what I actually said. Next slide. This is Nigerian Pidgin English. I said, hello, I am Will, and even if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, no problem, please. In Nigerian Pidgin, say, how the name, even if you don't understand what they say, no wala. Then, I just wanted to say, paying attention to the speaker and thinking deeply before saying anything will reduce half of our miscommunication. The problem here was, I said it fast. That's why many of you couldn't understand it. And lastly, fancy English, or what do I say? Old English. I really appreciate those who enjoy my speech, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day. Thank you.
Think about a word that has hurt you the most in your life. What was it? On the other hand, what was the most encouraging word in your life? There is a proverb in the Bible that says, soft and soul turns away wrath. This shows how words can prevent great trouble. Whether it is good or bad, words have a great impact on people. These words could be obstacles, but on the other hand, they could be a driving force in our lives. So today I'm going to talk about the importance of a single word. Personally, when I think of the most hurtful word said to me, it would be the praise, "Why are you so selfish?" When I was young, my dad said this to me during a heated argument. While I don't remember what was going on at the time, to this day the praise remains in my heart. To be fair, my father didn't truly believe that I was selfish. It was most likely an unintentional, heartless, and angry remark during the fight. But it shows how easily words can turn into weapons that pierce through your heart. On the other hand, one of the words that gave me the most strength was said to me unexpectedly. A few years ago, I was going through a normal day, but then suddenly I received a text from my friend that said, "I was feeling very low, but you have made my day today." This was very surprising because I was treating her the same way as I would always have. However, her words of appreciation made me feel joyful, which really made my day. Positive words truly do have the power to change people. But are positive comments helpful? Since when I was young, I have often heard the praise that "you're so kind, you're so mature." At first glance, this might look like compliments, but unfortunately, these words also set certain expectations in my heart, which piled up in my heart. As a result, I was trapped in the off-season that I had to be kind and mature. I always lived under a mask to ensure that I looked kind-hearted and grown up. My mask prevented me from showing my true colors, my true self. In such a way, words can control people's behavior. Every word has tremendous power. Even if it is generally used as positive word, depending on the situation, these words could potentially negatively impact others. As I conclude my speech, I wanted to ask you, did you feel the strength of words? Due to the power of words, communication can often be difficult. We often fear that we might accidentally hurt or upset others. If this is true for you, why don't you try this? Say, "You made me feel better," to someone right now. How do you feel? Most likely you will feel that you and your partner are feeling great. So I hope you can understand the greatness of a single word and use it to spread positivity around you. Thank you for listening.
Sign language. Communication is an essential part of our lives. We not only share your thoughts and ideas, but it was one of the most common means to express my emotion and needs. Thus, people who cannot speak or hear experience many frustrations and difficulties in their lives. Among the many ways of communication today, I am going to talk about word of sign language. Sign language is one of the ways that people can communicate. It means, "Hello, you're curious about who I am, right? I will start introducing myself." This is sign language. I want to ask a question to the audience. Does mine know any sign language? Sign language is a language that conveys meaning by changing the shape using your hands and fingers, the direction of the palm of the hand, the position of the hand, and the movement of the hand are all key elements in sign language. Sign language is mainly used by the deaf people, their family, and sign language interpreters. The sign language was started by Charles Michel, the one who established the world's first agricultural school in Paris, France, where they taught sign language of deaf children. Charles Michel said that sign language is the mother tongue for deaf people. Sign language began to become a common means of communication for deaf people, and it began to spread around the world. It was unclear when or how sign language was introduced in Korea, but as deaf people congregated with one another, they slowly adapted the sign language system to communicate with various people. Interestingly, sign language differs slightly from country to country. However, there is a sign language problem. Do you know what sign language means? It's okay. It's a move where you put your right little finger on your chin twice. There's an etymology of terrible sign language here. It's a sign language created based on the meaning and movement of Japan's yakuza cutting their fingers. It means it's okay to cut a finger. Is this really okay? Actually, the sign language we use came from Japan. Therefore, it contains Japanese culture that is different from ours. So this is what we teach. It's okay is like biting your finger. You don't care about small things. Let's look at one more example. Volunteer. The sign language is said to have originated from the movement of Japan samurai to commit harakiri and take out their guns. It's really terrible. However, it is difficult to change the behavior of sign language that has already been distributed. However, the etymology of motion can be changed by capturing our culture. Like this, we need to be a country where we can live better and communicate with each other by correcting the mistakes in sign language. Sign language is a form of communication and is difficult to approach, but it would be good to spread sign language little by little and live and communicate with more people like many deaf people. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I'm Samuel Kwon from Class Wisdom. I would like to introduce you about the culture of Korea, equals K culture. Especially, I want to say about table manners of Korea without no way. There are three parts of the manners that I could say before a meal, at meal, and after a meal. Part 1. Before a meal. First, before you eat, you have to say thank you for the meal. This mention is a basic etiquette for the person who prepared the meal. Second, do not sit down before the others have taken their seat, and do not hold a spoon and chopsticks before they have held them. It is an etiquette in Korea that the adult be first and an expression of respect them. Part 2. Have beer first. You couldn't make noisy or drinking soup or chewing food when you're eating. Second, the other people couldn't see what is in your mouth. Third, when you cough or burp, it's polite to cover your mouth with your hands and turn your hand in a direction where is nobody. Because the other people couldn't be unpleasant. Fourth, you should eat to the pace of the people you are with. Part 3. After a meal, first, if you act faster than the other people, then wait until the other people finish to eat. But when you are in a hurry, ask the other people for forgiveness and leave first. Second, you have to say thank you for the meal. I hope that you will take this opportunity to observe good table manners. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I am Echan from class H1. I want to introduce about food culture of Joseon Dynasty. The reason why I chose this topic is the characteristics of Korean food were emphasized during the Joseon Dynasty, and it was the time when the representative side dish, kimchi, was completed. I would like to recommend Korean kimchi to foreigners in Joseon Dynasty using red pepper powder in food which was flavor before that was changed to harmonious flavor, and kimchi was complete. Baking kimchi was an important and necessary event, and it held once a year, and we ate kimchi by putting radishes and cabbages, and kimchi was stored by putting kimchi jar in the ground, usually in October. Look the lunar calendar, which is described for our ancestors. Thank you for listening.
I am going to talk about the communication system called Braille. Braille is simply a reading system for the blind people. It is made by waving raised dots on pink paper. To use Braille, you need a high degree of concentration, but it is one of the most important tools for visually impaired people to acquire knowledge and skills. Now let's talk about Louis Braille, who invented the Braille system. Louis Braille became blind when he was 4 years old. At the time, the blind people were destined to be a beggar, appear on a show, or become a miner. They were unable to live for their entire lives and had no choice but to wander in the dark. Thankfully, Louis Braille's parents were determined not to give to fate. To answer that, Louis grows up just like a normal boy. At the age of 10, the parents decided to send Louis to the Royal Institute for the Blind in Paris, which was the world's first school for the blind. Louis excelled in school, and especially he excelled in studying history, math, science, and grammar. Not only that, but he proved especially gifted musician, which led to him also becoming a composite, pianist, and organist. Through his education, Louis Braille learned about a captive who invented a covered writing
system called the night riding. This code with 12 raised dots and dashes allowed soldiers to communicate with each other at night without using lights that indicate the location of the enemy. It seemed complicated but inspired Louis to create a new system for the blind. Louis simplified the system. This should reduce the series of dots from 12 to 6 and eliminated the dashes. By the time he was 20, Reis published his first alphabet for the blind, a system he continues to work on the perfect. I am moved by his determination to make his life a blessing and enrich mankind. Louis Braire's family and local priests took good care of Louis Braire's mental health. I think that such a result may have been achieved. It seems that the unconditional support and love of his family, as well as the wisdom and teachings of spiritual leader, brought Louis Braire's life in the right. In conclusion, we must live by communicating with God, regardless of whether we can see with our eyes or not. Thank you.
The very concept of objective truth is fading out of the world. Lies will pass into our futures. Good morning. No. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, my name is John Yoon from the Victory class. Originally, my first essay was going to start with a fast quote by great George Orwell. I was illustrating difficulties of communication, and I was also saying that a clear objective without any hostile attitude is the solution to have a proper communication. I felt it was clear and well-organized essay, but unlike my expectations, when I showed it to my parents, they said, even if it's too universal, it's hard to understand. Those words are that I hated the most. Being too universal and unable to understand my words. At the time, I completely disagreed with my parents because it was the result of hours of hard writings. And it was the point that I couldn't calm my anger down, and I was getting very much emotional. Why can't I understand these simple words? It's too universal? Does anyone think like this? I said many words of anger to myself. But as time passed, my feelings began to subside little by little, and I realized that there is nothing to gain by my remaining angry. I decided to scrap my first essay because it also reminds me of my passport effort called money game. Even though it is quite late, I still want to say sorry guys to my peers who had to deal with my over-stubbornness. Like this, my stubbornness always seems to have made me selfish and a tyrant. So after a lot of thought, in the end, I decided to tell my own story of communication in the speech contest. Would you like to hear that? Yeah. Thank you. I will never forget my freshman year report card. I did well on my studies as well as received excellent report cards. If you think that I am showing off now, the answer is you're right. But within the almost perfect year, there was something that I was lacking. Can you guess what it was? It was the ability to communicate with my friends. You know that the school that I was in represented the F score as the ability. So I got F score as the ability to communicate with my friends. Come to think of it, my communication has always been one-sided. Just like a car traveling on a one-sided road, my conversation was similar in manner. When my peers spoke, I immediately felt that their arguments are like fluid and illogical, like a car driving on the wrong side. But it was me always who was the fool. I always strongly insisted on my opinion and during any decision-making process, and due to my stubbornness, my images on my friends got tarnished and deteriorated to the point where Joshua worried about me. Don't get me wrong, it's not sarcasm. I mean, I was very rude. Also, even though when I was able to go through with my opinion, the results were not always good. I didn't know it at the time, but now that I think about it, I was a little bit narcissist and individualistic person. So I wish this speech could be the opportunity to fix my style and ways. Like my previous two pages essay, I will turn it over and rewrite it again. Just like Jesus did, I will try to put down my opinion and raise the views of others. In the future, I will do best to be humble and to get rid of any arrogant thoughts such as that thinking I'm better than others. While numerous rejections from Mrs. Mijong during writing essay process were very challenging, however, I believe I have grown great amount through these transgressions. And I'm certain that it was a meaningful time to rethink my communication, and I am convinced that the life will be the same. I believe that this speech is the beginning of changing my style, and so I ask for your prayers so that I can develop into a great communicator. Take care, everybody, and thank you.
Communication is commonly known as sharing thoughts and meaning of another. It is generally considered to be between two or more people talking on another or exchanging opinion. But today I'm going to introduce a slightly different style of communication. It's music. There is a lot of music in our lives. We love listening to countless songs either on the street or the ring of your alarm in the morning. Music is a big part of your lives. You often think of music as a one-way communication. However, music is frequently communicated with various people. So it is truly possible to communicate with music. For me, the answer is yes, and there is my reasons. First, we can share the artist's feeling through the lyrics or melody. When we listen to music, we will feel similar emotion most of the time. When you are excited about something upsetting today, or something pleasant, you can communicate with the artist by listening to songs. Lyrics and the atmosphere is created. Of course, I will not be a face-to-face communication, but I can realize that there is someone who shares my feelings. Ideas similar to me. They're sharing my feeling and creating a common ground is itself a type of communication. Second, you can communicate with yourself through music that reflects your current state. People often share their current mood through their Kakao profile and playlist. The profile is an abbreviated expression of my current mental state. So if my profile was filled with edgy, moody vibe, some of my friends might worry about my current state. Then if you change your Kakao profile in a happier ambience, it could positively mean that your current state status was getting better. Like this, popular music is a great indicator of one's emotion and feelings. The same goes for music playlists. If you look at the atmosphere of the music on your playlist and what message are in it, you can see one current state their playlist can communicate my best by looking back at my previous playlist, which tell a narrative of my best mood. Third, I can communicate with people who like and enjoy the same style of the music as me. People who like their favorite genre of music or artists enthusiastically are called fans. It is hard to think of a singer without a fan. And the dedication of the fan allows the singer to strive, which creates the artist's identity. That's why fans who like the same artist feel the great bond with each other. Now that the idol industry is growing, fans are actively communicating online using means of open telephone, neighbor cafe, and blogs. Also, you can communicate easily in many ways, such as making friends who like the same artist in real life. In this way, we can constantly communicate with music in our lives. There are countless ways to communicate. I can communicate with artists, with myself, and with fans who like the same music. Thank you for listening.
Do you know how much time an average family spends on conversation? It is about 30 minutes. How much do you think you spend the time talking within your family? Personally, as I wrote this speech, I realized that I really don't talk with my family. The lack of conversation with families might not seem like a serious problem, but it could cause serious adverse effects. In Korea, one of the reasons for estrangement in family is due to the lack of communication between parents and children. According to a survey by the Child Fund Korea, among middle and high school students, only 0.9% of time is spent talking within their families. On the other hand, the students use more than 190 minutes for academics, such as homework, and 84 minutes for youth media use time, such as TV and smartphones. This data shows the family conversation time is significantly less than either academics or media usage. The percentage of Korean parents who talk to their children on a daily basis was only 53.7%, which is far shorter than the OECD average of 70%. So why aren't parents talking to their children? While there are various causes, the one of most notable reason is that there is no opportunity to have friendly conversation. In Korean society, academics are one of the most essential parts of the students' lives. As a result, children do not have chance to talk because of the rigorous schedules. From going back and forth from school academics and eventually arriving back home around 10 p.m. This intense routine not only is tiresome for students, but it also blocks the opportunity to have healthy relationships. This disconnection of conversation causes mutual distrust and conflict. In 2015, Ministry of Gender Equality and Family surveyed over 5,000 families. In the report, 70.4% of fathers and 13.8% of mothers think that their children do not understand them. And 19.2% of adolescents think that their fathers, and 22.6% of mothers do not understand them as well. Not only that, but this disconnected conversation also affects the mental health of adolescents. In another survey by the Ministry of Gender, Equality and Family states that 1 in 4 Korean who in age of 9 to 24 experience severe depression and despair. Yang Mi-jin from the Korea Young Counseling and Welfare Development Institute states that most of the young people who have recently had counseling were either due to the depression and extreme stress. When there are problems in students' lives, it becomes a significant problem when they can't rely on their families. This is reality where there isn't any healthy communication within the family. The family connections are becoming weaker to a point where parents are much familiar with their children's backside than their face. So how can we overcome this difficulty? One of the ways to reduce family disconnections is for parents to understand child's position, even if they don't fully understand it. Often parents do not know how to communicate with their children. If conversation with your child is difficult, it might be helpful to receive parents' education. Since May 2018, the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family has been operating a specialization program for parent-child relation at 228 nationwide young counseling centers. Park In-kyung, a parents' education instructor at the Korean Institute of Health and Family Promotion, said it is important for the children to learn how to talk from the young age. You have to listen to your children as well as play and encourage them to talk. However, realistically, couples who work often do not have time to talk with time to take parents' education classes. Therefore, it is necessary to make an effort to establish work-life balance. To create such an environment, we need to dedicate governments that support family problem counseling, parents' education, and reducing the work burden for all employees with children. But most importantly, we should all try to understand each other's position, both parents and children, and spend more time talking with our families. Thank you.
Yes, we can hear slangs in our life. Then, what is slang? And what is slang in your life? As the word developed, people wanted a more convenient and quicker word, which often led to various inventions such as phones, televisions, and the internet. These kinds of innovation affect people's lifestyle, but more importantly, they significantly impact the style of communication. As a result of the rapid changes, people's conversation become faster, simpler, and wittier, which has led to emergence of slang. The history of slang began with criminals, but it was spread by young men in 16th to 17th centuries. The word slang originally means a low status, but now it simply means a casual word. Slangs are informal words or phrases that are usually used in common speech rather than writing. Slang's colorful expressions are succinct, sometimes witty, and frequently social criticism gives slang its characteristic flavors. Slangs are just simple words, but it depends on how it's uniquely used in certain social contexts.
Slangs are used for many purposes, but generally it expresses a certain emotional attitudes. Slangs has an interesting characteristic that is mostly used by one typical group. I'll give an example. Let's think I make a one, which means paying from hard work. If I am a member of certain group and members in that group finds this word one represents their feelings, it will become a unique word for their store use. Yes. Eventually, the word one will gain currency within the group and create a sense of connection by using among the group. Slangs give a sense of belonging to users and makes them think that they are part of one group. Isn't it surprising? People can feel connection by using the slangs they created. Another element of slang is that it is always changing. Linguists have no simple and clear definition of slang, but agree that it is a constantly changing linguistic phenomenon present in every subculture worldwide. So, those slangs haven't any disadvantages. As I said before, through slang, we can be more familiar with others and talk faster and more cleverly. But slangs have problems too. The biggest problem is that most slangs is associated with negative connotations. It is usually used to bother or antagonize others. These kinds of slang can hurt others' emotions and lead them into various adverse consequences. The elements of solution is a problem as well. Slang generally cannot be understood by other person who don't know its meaning. For example, if I said break a leg to my friend who doesn't know its meaning, I can be very absurd people because I'm saying them to fracture their leg. But person who knows its meaning can understand, and I just wish good luck to my friend. This example shows how these kinds of misunderstanding could occur due to the uniqueness of slang. Our voice has a strong power, and use this power useful in purposes is depend on us. I hope everyone uses slangs wisely. Thank you.
There are many ways of communicating in the world. Among them, I would like to introduce Morse code. Do you know Morse code? Morse code is often used in words and sheets, and it can be communicated in many ways. For example, there was a scene in the movie Exit where I asked for help and I used a flash on my phone. It's supposed to be a combination of dots and lines to represent letters and symbols, but if that's not the case, it can also be used as a method of field exits also. There are people who are not feeling well and can't speak, and they can communicate Morse code with their eyes. It can be used in so many ways. Do you know how Morse code came about? Morse was the first to create the Morse code, but it was not an original idea. In fact, it was intercepted by someone else. The actual inventor of the telegraph was Joseph Henry, a physicist and professor at Princeton University, who invented it in 1831. He devised the basic concept of the telegraph communicating with encrypted electrical stimulation through wires, and designed for the essential structures necessary for the practical use of device. There's a history of this that allowed the Morse code to exist. The Morse code was able to exist because of these histories. So why is Morse code important? I think there are many people who don't know Morse code, but Morse code was first the only way to communicate in the world. I use Morse code to communicate, but I think the outcome of the world might have been different because communication was impossible without it. However, Morse code is really important, so you have to be as careful. There are other ways to communicate other than Morse code. There's a communication called binary. The binary code is similar in principle to Morse code, but it's representing numbers with 0 and 1. Morse code represents language, but binary represents numbers. I have introduced binary, a principle similar to Morse code and Morse code, which I have heard of in this way, but I don't have a chance to easily encounter in my daily life. I think it is important to be more interested in these communication methods and to communicate with various people in many ways.
How do you overcome hardships? Hardships are an inevitable element of our lives, and people have various ways to ensure their pain. Some might hit something hard with all their might, and some might eat something very spicy. These are some common coping methods that people generally use to endure their hardships. And while everyone's method might be different, we all have some way to deal with it. So today, I'm going to introduce you to my coping method strategies. First, we need to acknowledge that we cannot bear all the burdens by ourselves. Meeting friends and sharing my problems and sufferings can be a great aid in defeating any hardships. One of the supports you gain from your friends is called consolation. When I'm struggling, my friend and understand my pain and comfort me when I'm feeling dismally. Through my friend's consolation, I can have a peaceful time and overcome it together. While others might think differently, I think coping with your friends is one of the most effective ways to endure your hard times. Another way to overcome hard times is to think biblical figures who have defeated their trials through God. I believe one of the prime examples is our Savior and Lord Jesus Christ. And Jesus is God, but when He came to us, He gave up all His glory just for us. Through His life, He spread the good news and of God's word to evangelize the world. However, while Jesus was fulfilling God's commands, it has also brought many trials and tribulations. It was more like a battlefield. He was persecuted just because he was preaching the gospel, which resulted in Jesus being crucified in the cross. He was done these things for good, not for his good, but for our good. He did this because he loved us. So if hard times come to you, you can think about how Jesus would do it if he was here. That no matter what kind of hard things you are faced with, you'll be able to understand it even though it is a bit hard for you. People can have different kinds of ways to overcome hard times, but the most important thing is to figure out your own way to overcome the hard times. I believe that you can be like Superman, who can withstand all his sufferings and hardships. But importantly, I hope you overcome it through the grace of God. I hope you enjoyed my speech, and thank you.
All humans have many difficulties in their lives, but we often are self-focused on our struggling.
While the frequency and intensity to which you feel difficulties and how you deal with them could be different among people, most of the people believe that their struggles are greater than others. Thus, it is important not to simply generalize the other hardship. We always have to act sensibly and always try to understand the pain of others rather than judge them by my standard. Like everyone else, I too have faced difficult moments in my life, whether it was because of my mistake, other, or because of something unexpected. There were times when I felt down, but every time, one way or the other, I had found a way to cope with the circumstance. Today, I'm going to talk about overcoming difficulties in my way. I hope my method will help you to overcome your struggles. My method overcoming difficulties is quite simple. Try your best to face your difficulty. Even if you're in deep frustration and despair, eventually you will bump into the troubles you are struggling with. During those moments, I often pray with all my heart to seek the help of Holy Spirit, or sometimes I consult with my mentors about my issues. Sometimes there might be an easy solution, but most of the time we never find the answer to your worries. However, through organizing and fierce prayer, the situation will generally resolve to some extent. At that point, your complicated and confused mind will become relaxed and calm down. The next step is distinguish between area of effort and faith. Throughout my experience, I have realized that simply worrying doesn't help you to solve the problem. So I will give it all my life. I seek God's help in an area out of my control. But I trust God to do things that I can do, and I do my best what I can and should do. This also allows me to accept the help of Holy Spirit to acknowledge God helps me, and I completely rely on God in times of transgression. The last step is one of the hardest of them all, which is to humbly accept the outcomes. After our prayer and effort, it is essential for us to humbly accept the result, even if it's not what you have wished for. Of course I can do because I believe in God's goodness and then when I do my best. Even if I don't get good result right now, I will work together everything later to be good for me. Our process is important, but I think the most important is to accept the result. It is because acceptance must be accompanied by faith. Without faith, we will truly accept the gospel, but rather just simply giving up. When we give up, we do not gain anything, but by letting go, we allow the gospel to our lives. Thus, while our transgressions are often horrid and terrifying, they could also be a gift from God. God wants for us to go through difficulty of us to grow in our faith. Therefore, I pray about that I will accept the result to faith to acknowledge God's plans for my life. Looking at the Bible, the Joseph had also similarly overcome his difficulties as mine. He was sold by his brother, and due to it, he enslaved, framed, and innocently imprisoned. Nevertheless, through all his suffering, he never let go of his trust in God. As a result, God allows him to become Prime Minister of Egypt and thus save his people who were persecuted. Genesis 50:20 talks about how God used Joseph's brother even for good to save his people. Like Joseph, while we might seem our failure and problem or the final result, it ensures us that God even used evil around us. By accepting our situation, God can use us to great things such as Joseph. Dear fellow students, teachers, and faculty, do not be afraid. Do not fear facing difficulties. Throughout our lives, we will encounter various hardships. Some may be so greater than anything that we have ever experienced. The situation may be unstable, chaotic, and difficult at times, but not fear. Remember that God will be my Father, rock, and fortress. He will not let us be shaken. So the next time you face any types of difficulty, pray and ask for God's guidance. If you do your best, eventually you will be able to overcome all of it and feel full of pride in discovering with yourself. I wish you and I will be filled in God's grace and joy, and I pray that God's peace be with you. Thank you.
Kilometer run every day to overcome their hardship. Everyone has their own way, but what if I told you there is a systemic and a low barriers methods to cope with your trouble? So, in today's speech, I'm going to tell you 3 ways to overcome the difficulties that I have found successful. One of the easiest ways to defeat hardship is to simply sleep. And surprisingly, our brain accounts for only 2% of our body, but it uses a large amount of energy. However, due to the high consumption of energy, if you use your brain for a long time, you can easily have a brain overload. Due to this, sleeping is one of the most important practices to recover from brain fatigue. So, sleep is a good opportunity for our body to get energy by putting aside all the thoughts for a moment. After resting, I can start work with a clear and refreshing feelings which and secure for clear and obstacle in front of us. Therefore, the simple act of the sleep is a successful way to overcoming hardship. And secondly, you must plan on how to solve your problem. And planning makes it easier for us to separate and solve things more efficiently. As you make the plans, it can allow us to reduce any emotional baggage and motivate us to solve the problem. Moreover, it makes a prioritize important work from others. And by establishing a clean plan, you will most likely have to find the successful solutions with minimal effort. While due to the chaos nature of our life, it's difficult to find the time to map out a plan for my struggles, but I will assure you, if you intentionally figure out the solutions, it won't surely save time. My last method is positive thinking. Thinking negative is very provocative and educated that keeps me hooked and does not let go. And for instance, if I get of the anxieties as on consequence, my mind will be fear of the negative. It often results in dwelling in the unescapable of the misery. Inside the pit, everything seems bleak and dreadful, and it may seem hopeless. However, to create out the atmosphere, you need to think positively. Positively is a strong force and educated you to overcome an adversity. This hopeful mindset not only affects your own life, but it also affects your surroundings. Simply by sharing your positive view with others, you can share your enthusiasm around you. In any situation, you must develop and think positively without being too systemic, pessimistic. Through it, you will gain a stepping stone to success. Sleeping for rest the brain and systemic problem by planning and positive thinking are great tools for your mental health. Thus, reduce your pain and refraining from those problems
but unfortunately you will never be free from those hardships. So I hope each time you face such a problem, you will find a solution that's best to suit you. Thank you.
When we write, we meet many hardships. At this time, people are divided into two types. It is a person who ignores hardship and a person who overcoming hardship. What is their difference? There are probably many differences, such as differences in experience or attitudes. But I think it is important how you treat your emotions. What is the boundary between insignificant and burden emotion? You're not offended by the word. Just think about how to deal with it. But trivial emotions make it easier to hurt. It is also a trivial emotion and does not express will. Even we think that I'm sensitive to revealing my emotion to minor things. Of course, it is a bad act to be angry with emotions. I'm just taking my trivial emotions conceit. You can think of trivial emotion as not a big deal, but in fact, trivial emotions are all about our emotion. Acknowledge trivial emotions is that I can't control my emotion. This leads to maturity, but maturity is not perfecting or good thing, but acknowledging you own love. There are some parts that are lacking and necessity. When you look for someone who looks perfect in others' eyes, they just don't reveal it. If I have the inner strength to look at it without denying insolvency in me, I will have the strength to either external negative words. This is the strength of the mind, the strength to either concentration. However, finding and admitting your lack is a very difficult task. That's why I recommend an emotional diary. An emotional diary is to write a diary basis on your emotion and look back on your emotion. Through it. It is much better to draw emotions out of your head than to think vaguely with your head. If you write an emotional diary every day, look back on your emotion and practice how to control your emotions. The power of your mind with words became stronger. Confucius says there fortune and life in the world. In fortune is what heaven has said. Life is result of our choice. They are called destiny. So if the adversity given to us is what heaven has given us. It is our choice that is life. The choice is to do it on your own, never making a choice according to your mood. Even if it is a trivial emotion, is your know how to control it. No hardship will overtake you. Confucius is 공자. Thank you for my listening.
Hello, I'm Caleb Han, and I'm happy to say that I'm becoming the 6th graduate of Grace Christian School called Geeks. Before I begin my speech, I want to glorify God who deserves all the honor and glory. Through Him, I'm here today and speaking in front of all of you. It's been 4 years since I came to this school. Before Geeks, I was just a regular high school student at a normal school, but in the summer of my 9th grade year, my mother drove me and my sister to a unknown destination. There I was, in English camp. I saw students taking the word test, worship, and talk fluently with foreign teachers. The students came to me to talk even though they didn't know anything about me. But yeah, the devotion they showed me for the short month was enough to change my mind to attend this school. When I first started this camp, I was annoying my mother by sending me to camp, but ironically, after I decided to attend the school, I was also complaining why I couldn't attend the gigs. So after I spent my remaining half semester, my life at gigs began. When I first started, I was really happy to be at gigs, but I felt that there was a very big hurdle between my friend and me. Compared to my friends, academic, peer relationship, and spirituality were a bit burdensome to overcome as a simple age gamer. However, by looking at the exemplary students and teachers, I began to start my journey to live like a good person. As time went by, I was still struggling with becoming that good person. Then, one day during Sunday worship, I heard a sermon about God's love toward me, which really made me think deeply about God's love. I asked myself, why would God love me? Why would He choose me? And can I be a good brother, sister, disciple, and proud son? It was at the service that God loved me and began to change my mind and life. I thought that if I could be fully loved by God as His children, no matter what others say, I would always know that I'm truly being loved and cared. Since then, God has made me realize how pleasant it is to build relationships with new people in a new environment. Also, when I first took English classes at gigs, I did not understand anything, but through the grace of God, now I am able to understand the classes as well as to talk with foreigners one-on-one. Now, I'm going to take my first step toward the world beyond the call gigs. For nearly 4 years, gigs encouraged me to enact what I'm due, to living in front of God, whatever I do. I'm now praying to stand in front of God as an unashamed servant. Lastly, I really want to give thanks to all who have made an impact in my life. First and foremost, I want to thank my parents who have always supported me and loved me. My pastor and teachers who have taught me and prayed me through thick and thin. And last but not least, I want to thank my 선배s who have made me understand how living in this difficult society as well as my hobbies for being there with me, even though I was a bit weird and unique young world oppa. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Hello, I'm Michael Lee, the 6th graduate of GCS. Before I start, I'd like to thank God for leading me to this place, as well as everyone who came to listen to my story. So let me tell you a short part of my life. I was born into faith, and the church was a familiar place to me. It was a place to meet and play with friends. And I've grown up listening to the word that you are God's child. I was an innocent person who lived without any worries. Through the church, I knew the gospel, but at the time, it was just information that I knew. When I first entered school at the age of 12, I was embarrassed by the unfamiliar environment. It was shocking that all classes were in English, and there was a boring service every morning. My academic life was just chaos, because I didn't know English well at the time. I was also forced to enter the dormitory at a young age because of my studies. The dormitory life was not so smooth either. The scary education, called 참교육, from scary teacher was always there, and I had lived with fear every day. Of course, I wasn't scolded for no reasons. At the time, I was growing up to be a worse child because of the overlapping puberty. While walking down the path of bad child, my seemingly spiritual life continued. There were moments that I was thrilled at the church retreat that made me think I was a perfect child of God. However, as I went to school, those thoughts were gradually broken. The doctrine of living as God's children was the opposite of my life. At first, catechism questions that I passed casually gradually pierced my mind and changed my mind. The words during the mandatory Daniel's prayer meetings also made me realize my sinful life and made me truly know of God's love. Of course, I'm still not good enough, but I was able to walk safely to this graduation ceremony through the school teaching. Thanks to all the teachers who led me in a good way with their wonderful teachings. After I graduate, I will become a person who shares grace and love with all people, whoever I may. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kate Kim. I am finally graduating from KIDS. Before I tell you my story, I first want to glorify our God who administers all things. Have you ever experienced working alone with your eyes closed? Wouldn't it be scary to run into something without even noticing? This dirty and fearful environment was my life. I have lived harder than anyone else, but I also wanted to die more than anyone else as well. Throughout all the chaos, I have to live differently than others. During all my pain, I was suggested to go back to school. At the time, the thought of going back to school as insane. But looking back, I realized there was a visible force that made me say yes. I looked into many alternative Christian schools, but KIDS was the only school that accepted me. There, the handsome teacher JK was a we need care especially for our suffering students. I have always went to church, but never really a part of it. Incidentally, I felt that all the students were very well. It was strange to me that they never slept during every morning service. Though the fact that every took note during worship and praying for one another. So, reason to me, moreover, when I first entered the school, I thought I would be bombarded with questions regarding me. Unusual access into the school and its time. And the more I studied, the more I realized how big God's love is. During every Friday service, I could feel first unconditional love toward those students. This began to move me, but it wasn't until the Daniel prayer that I was completely certain of my salvation and of the Father's love for me. Nevertheless, I was still fighting my demons inside of me. It was up to a point where I decided to quit school. But when I come to school to say my goodbye, someone held my hand and told me of her prayer. Her had many negative experiences, but this day, July 1st, 2022, I can probably say that I am finally graduating. I want to say thank you to all the teachers who never gave up on me. I am grateful to all those who taught this talkative and probably child despite the language barrier. Also, thank you family, my friends Caleb and Michael, who was there for me when I was sleepy. I also want to say thank you for babysitting me whenever you are deciding your practice, whenever you are asking for worldly obedience, biblical advice. Seek God and create a truly close and intimate relationship with God. For 2.5 years, I learned so much and grew in faith through gigs. I met God here, and that is enough for me. Thank you.